Hey you, come, gather around the campfire, and welcome to the party. This is Party Chat, a JRPG podcast where we talk about everything that we love in the world of JRPGs and other Eastern titles. I am one of your hosts, Cameron Hawkins, and with me, as always, is my party partner, Kevin Kenson. Kevin, how you doing?
I am doing well today. Just kind of it's a Friday. We're getting rain in California finally. So
It's raining here too.
yeah, no, it's that time of year. I'm gonna get like 6 days of this off and on for the next 2 months, and I'll enjoy each of those 6 days. Uh, Especially because I don't have anything to do like outside today. You know what I mean? Like I love the rain, but
Mm-hmm.
not when I got like shit to do.
Oh, I
So
love I love being out in the rain.
I mean, I like being out in the rain if I'm just hanging out or something, but if I'm like trying to drive places and do stuff and like just trying to get
Sure.
moving, especially in California, because like I don't know, man, people live here their whole lives and they see rain for 5 seconds and it's like suddenly everyone forgets how a car
They just don't
works.
know how to drive.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
so
like,
funny.
oh no,
That's so
everyone's
funny to
braking
me.
constantly. I hate it. Uh, but that is not
But
why we're here today.
speaking of water, Kevin, you got to go hands on with Dragon Quest VII Reimagined. Thank you to Square for inviting Kevin out to play. Kevin, give us all your thoughts.
Yeah, so just some quick, basic setup for what I played. It was another one of those demos where you do two different sections of the game. The first section I played was a fair good bit into the game. I don't remember the exact like rough hour mark, but I mean, you have almost the full party. You're missing one character by this point. You have the ability to do the multi-class system, which I want to talk about. And just generally speaking, I have a lot more moves and things to work with to see what the game looks like in its later stages. And then the other 45 minutes I had was spent on an earlier part of the game where you don't even really have the class system yet. You just have your like first three big story characters and kind of navigating that earlier segment of the game. So giving a good taste of how those two different parts feel, because that's one of the things that's really interesting about Dragon Quest VII is how it's a game that uses a class system, but it also uses like actual characters, unlike say Dragon Quest III, where you have like nameless party members. And so they all start off. It starts off like a JRPG where everyone just has their specific gimmick or shtick, and like cool, like that's what they all do. And then the game goes, oh wait, never mind. There's actually a full class system here, and now you can experiment with that and toy with. There might be certain concepts that make more sense to you for those party members, but it does walk both those lines, which is really neat. Um, I think the first thing I'll touch on just real quick is some of the story aspects of Seven, just from what I was able to see in this quick little snippet. One of the things that's really interesting about the original Seven that's absolutely being kept alive here and reimagined is I would say that like most Dragon Quest games tend to have a lightly episodic nature to them. Like oh, there's always going to be like little tiny side story arcs and things that are happening as you travel across the world and do stuff. But Seven very heavily leans into this concept. The whole idea is that you are constantly traveling to these different island areas, and each island is its own story that you're kind of unfolding. There's a new cast of NPCs you're meeting. There's a new local problem you need to take, try to solve and help people out with. And there is like a way this all ties together, and ultimately there is like an ending to it. It's not just all completely random stuff, uh, but there is absolutely, I think, a very heavier focus on this concept of adventure and wandering and just seeing the world and experiencing all these different things, as opposed to say like having recently played the HD 2D collection from 1, 2, 3, those are all like, hey, there's a bad guy right away that you have to like figure out how to handle. Seven doesn't really do that as the focus right away. It's much more just like, hey, we're getting on a ship and we're doing stuff. Like we're checking things out. Which on the one hand, I
Um,
know that's part of why like Seven's intro took so long back in the day, but I think it also does really lend itself a particular flavor of like, no, this is about adventure, which I really do dig personally. Like, I love that kind of storytelling. Sorry, I realized you were gonna say something.
I was gonna say, just like the premise just sounds a lot like One Piece.
A little bit. I was actually thinking the thing that came to my mind was like, yeah, imagine if all the East games were just one giant game. Like every time your ship gets crashed somewhere and you have to solve something, like that's, But yeah, One Piece absolutely kind of has that same vibe for sure. Um, Now, as far as combat goes, uh, this is Dragon Quest, party based, turn based. This is different from the recent HD 2D games where those went for the very old school approach of like you queue up everyone's individual command and then see how it plays out. Instead, this is the more kind of what you see in a lot more recent turn based RPGs where it's like, oh no, it's this character's turn. You're going to do their action for this turn, and then you'll see who acts next and like go from there. So you have a little bit more ability to adapt to the situation on the fly. Because I definitely know there's some times in like the older games where, you know, you try to do a certain thing, like maybe revive a character, and then the person trying to heal gets knocked out too, or something, or like something you're trying to do ends up getting thwarted because the speed doesn't play out the right way. Not a problem in this form of turn-based combat, thankfully. It also does take on a more like dynamic, because Seven was originally a later entry, anyways. That was 3D looking, but now combat, you see the whole party lineup the whole time. You're getting different camera angles when they go up to hit enemies. There's just a bit of a different energy to it coming from, especially the other remakes they've been doing lately, which were all from that NES, early SNES era. I think one of the most interesting things about this game's combat, though, is definitely the class system. And so the way that works out is, like I mentioned earlier, every character has like a starting class, and initially that's all you have to work with. And so it's like, hey, main character kind of fulfills the hero gimmick a little bit. He's a bit of a jack of all trades. There's an extra emphasis on him having like some water type moves because it's like, oh, like sailor, like oh, go, ship use, that kind of thing. But then as you get farther, like in that first segment of the game I played, there's a whole class system you can interact with, including not only different classes you can level up, but the ability to equip two of them at the same time. This is a new thing they've added in Reimagined, which they call moonlighting. I think they've used the term before. I want to say that was in Dragon Quest X. But the way moonlighting works is you just equip whatever two classes you want, and you're going to continue to grow in and be able to use all the things those classes do. And something I found really interesting about this is that, based on how it worked in 10 and based on how just a lot of games tend to handle class systems, I expected it was going to be something like, oh, you have your main class and then you can like, borrow some abilities from some second class or something. No, doesn't matter which one's your main, which one's your second. You get the full impact of whatever classes you're currently in. So that includes things like all the moves you've unlocked from each class, their stat impacts for different classes. So it's like, oh, because you have like this fighter class or whatever, you're going to have more defense and health and more physical stats. And what's really neat about that is there are a number of moves that will key off of different stats. Like, I forget the name of the class right now, but there were a bunch of moves that were keyed off charm. So that made it a thing where like, oh, so there's a lot of synergy where if I multi-class is like that class and then another class that boosts charm, like I'm going to get the most out of those moves. Or the main character even, I had him multi-class as something where it gained bonuses for having high defense. So that made it allowed for some really fun like class combinations and really thinking about like, oh, how do I want to meaningfully combine some of these, beyond just simply like, oh, I like this moveset and I like this moveset. The way the classes work as far as like getting more options, it's just a pure like level up the classes you have kind of thing, and it is a per character basis. So it's like, oh, to get this class, you need to be like level 10 in this and level 10 in this and that kind of idea, to be able to then get those more options. I didn't have enough time in the demo to unlock new classes, but everyone came with like a pretty good set of variety options and classes they were already fairly developed into, that I did get to at least see what those were like, in action.
Cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw a little bit of gameplay that Game Informer released for the game, and the vocation system. I think that's what like it's actually called in
Vocations.
the game.
Yeah, they go for like a
Um,
job theming of like, that's like, kind of like the moonlighting thing, right? Like, oh, this is your vocation. Yeah.
yeah. And seeing that there's like you can have two different ones, so it gives a lot of flexibility on, and I think that just with the starting class, which I believe is exclusive, like right, those are the only ones that are exclusive to a specific
Yes.
character.
Yeah, every character's starting class is unique to them, and like they all, I think they all walk like a similar line of being semi-varied. Like I don't think any of them are
Mhm.
super dedicated to like, oh, this is like a hardcore physical attacker, or this is this. But they do have like totally different sets of moves and other things to help differentiate. So that can also give you a bit of a guideline for like how you want to multi-class them later, or maybe play with still having that original class be one of the two they're in.
Yeah, with that in mind, even though, you can you can still customize how you want, they still give those they give each character kind of like a, hey, like here's a suggested way to like kind of see what this character does versus you know because I know that Ruff is his name, I think,
Yeah,
the guy with the dog, like, he seems to be like more of your heavy hitter type physical attacker type character, and like, you can make him a mage if you want, but they still kind of have that preset of like, hey, this is kind of like the direction we recommend you going.
yeah.
So it's nice that there's like both those aspects, like a kind of like a recommended, like this type of direction of build, or literally do whatever you want.
Yeah. Well, and as far as I could tell, it's not like the classes you level up as impact your like non-class specific stats. Like you really are just like benefiting from whatever your two current classes are. So there's a lot
Hmm.
of room for experimentation there, right? Where like yes, you can lean into that character's kind of innate play style where one of their two classes you keep being their like core like starter class and then mix in something else like, oh, I want to, they already lean towards magic, so I'm going to add wizard as like their other class. Or in the case of I think Ruff was his 3DS name. I think they went back to his actual Japanese in this one, which is Gabo. Um, but Gabo, you can lead into like having some other kind of like, yeah, physically aggressive class to lean into that. Or if you wanted to, you could just multi-class them as like two different magic user classes. I just want this character to do this. I'm not going to pay attention to what their like original core class thing is. I'm just going to hard lean in this direction, which I think is nice because it walks that balance of like, it gives you the tools to uh experiment and just kind of do whatever you want with characters, but it still allows each of those characters to have an identity because there is that like one unique class to them that helps like give a reason to build them a certain way. Something else is really nice about this too, I just remembered. Unlike Dragon Quest III, and really a lot of them, you can change these classes on the fly. You do not have to go to like a specific town or a place and talk to someone and then be like, oh, I want to reclass. I was able to do it just at a touch of, I think it was like up on the D-pad. It summons like a little vocation fairy that's just like, oh, do you want to like change your stuff? Okay, like here you go. Here's the class menu. What do you want to switch to? Here's what levels you have and what classes you haven't unlocked yet and what those require. Like gives you all the information, so you can have a lot of information up front in terms of like what the options are for each character, and then things you even want to build towards as well, which I appreciate. Because sometimes it's frustrating when like you don't know what classes need and you're just building stuff randomly and kind of hoping you unlock certain stuff. This one write up is just like, hey, like to unlock this mystery class, have someone hit level 10 in mage and level 10 in priest or whatever, which is handy.
Cool. Um, what's the exploration like? Did you get the chance to try any of that out, or was it just more
A little bit
of
loosely.
okay?
Both segments I was playing, I was kind of put into a situation right away, and it
Mm,
basically had me like go to a dungeon pretty quickly.
mhm,
I was able to walk around the world map a little bit, where I did find like there was like a special monster that was like tougher than regular, so I could get like more loot and XP, and I think they dropped like a special item too. I forget. I think there was some other reason to kill it other than just it's worth more XP. Um, but yeah, I was able to walk around the world map a little bit, and then one of the later section I was playing, while I was still restricted to a part of the ocean, I did have my ship for a bit, so I was able to kind of float around on that and check out a couple things. But it wasn't really a central focus of what I was able to play. So like, you know, uh, the world map exists and I was able to navigate it, but I don't have any kind of like extra insight on interesting aspects of that, at least for like the greater world exploration, at least. Something else I do want to touch on is the quality of life changes, because we're seeing some stuff come from what they are doing with the HD 2D games, where like weakness highlights are a thing. Uh, and then another thing though is they give way more in depth difficulty options. You can still just do a generic like, oh, I want, easy, normal, hard, Draki, Dragon, and Draconian. Is that what they call the three? Yeah. You still
Yeah,
have
something
those
like
kind
that.
of like group options, but you are also able to actually mess with individual parameters as well. So you can be like, hey, I just want enemies to be tougher. Like I'm having too easy of a time, make enemies stronger. Or, maybe you're the opposite. You want it to be a little easier, make the enemies weaker. Something I did, especially because, we're in these demos with a time crunch and it's like, I know I only have so much time with them. I didn't lower enemy difficulty, but another option you could do was adjust how much XP and gold you get from fights individually as
Mm,
well. So I just pumped both those up to like, I forget if it was 1.5 or double, but it was I was getting more XP, so I was leveling up a lot faster because I turned that on. So, especially if you don't like the idea of grinding in games, you don't mind having a challenge, but you also don't want to take 20 extra battles to have your stats be where they need to be for an opponent. You can adjust that curve in this so that you can level up faster and take less time on that. You can do that for job XP as well, because that is tracked separately from character level. And then there were a couple other interesting quality of life changes you could make. Some of the stuff we're familiar with, like being able to signal like where treasure chests are and that kind of thing. I think the interesting new one is because this game doesn't use random encounters. It does the like, oh, the enemies on the field, and if you touch
yeah.
them, you go into combat. You can turn off them being aggressive on the map. So like, if an enemy is standing somewhere and they see you and they can like run up to you and try to hit you to like initiate combat, you can turn that off where they'll just stand there and like you could walk around them. Or if they just wander around, you might have to be careful about not accidentally bumping into them, but like you can avoid the encounter that way. So it's kind of a neat way of not really turning encounters off, but giving you the ability to more approach them on your terms regularly instead of like, oh, I wasn't paying attention and this guy just ran up behind me and started a combat.
Cool. Yeah, one of the things I did want to mention, just this is just based off of like what I've seen, is that it's pretty refreshing seeing a lot more a new kind of pool of creatures that you fight in
Mm,
combat because, having played the Erdrick trilogy again and like again I played like 4 late last year and I've played most of 5 at this point. Like I think that 4 and 5 did introduce some new stuff when I was playing those, but like I think at my probably one of my like biggest criticisms of the Erdrick trilogy by the end of it is just like, boy, there's like definitely a certain pool of enemies that you fight in this game, and I wish it was a little bit more expansive.
yeah,
And
especially when like
it
some of them are the same enemy but with a different color palette, right? It's like, oh no, like this is
yeah,
this is the tougher version of that guy, and it's like,
exactly.
cool.
And there are aspects there are going to be those classic creatures that are like going to be in every Dragon Quest game, like
Sure.
a slime or a dragon or like things like that. But yeah, just kind of seeing the gameplay, it's like, oh, this seems very refreshing when it comes to the different type of enemies that you can encounter.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, I think part of that is just a result of because this was originally the seventh game in the series, and so like that roster does grow. Also because of like switching over to a new system, I think there was more room to like play with more varied enemy designs and like just more stuff to work with. But that absolutely comes through in this as well, where like, yep, as a result, you're now getting to see that benefit in this reimagined version of the game, which we haven't really talked about this much too yet because like I feel like the trailers already kind of sell this concept as is, but visually, love it. I know some
Oh
people
yeah,
are a little
love
thrown
it.
off by like the doll aesthetic for some characters. Uh, you know, Keeper specifically is I think the one that like a lot of people are like, that guy looks kind of weird. That's just how he looks. Like even his art, like his concept art, he still has that kind of odd look to him, to be honest. Like that's just the design. That's not the doll aesthetic, in my opinion at least. And I really
Yeah,
like the way it looks. Like the whole thing, like there's this kind of diorama aesthetic to everywhere. Like not just the character designs, but like the cityscapes, the environments. Uh, Absolutely love the visual look of this game.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we kind of talked about when we talked about like the future of Dragon Quest a few episodes ago, where like I think that this game gives a lot of hope or optimism that once the key figures of the Dragon Quest IP, namely Yuji Horii at this point, have like gone on or retire or whatever, that like this gives like a lot of optimism that yeah, maybe Dragon Quest will be okay. Like, because I feel like that this IP maybe more than most, right? Like have such a tie specifically to the creative uh people behind it that like there's definitely a understandable sense of worry um you know
Sure,
when on what the IP would evolve into or what would come of the IP after those creatives are no longer working on it after 40 years like so seeing the doll aesthetic and seeing how much it like still feels like Dragon Quest even though it's not directly having that Akira Toriyama art direction and art like character design, it's a good sign. I think that's like a very good sign, despite the circumstances. And that has me excited to see like what else. One, it makes me excited to see like what Dragon Quest 12 looks like, right?
sure.
Like we don't know how much Toriyama like worked on that before his passing. We don't know like if they when Toriyama passed they decided we're going to change things because we didn't get to do everything that he wanted to do with that and we'd rather like bin it or like not make that the focus because of that. There's so much that we don't know that like I just think that's like a very particular aspect of this remake that I don't know. I don't know how much people are really thinking about those things
Sure.
um with with the series moving forward, whether it be again 12 or an 8 remake or what have you down the line. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it does like give a good sign for what the what can be done because yeah, this does have like a different project lead working on it to my knowledge, uh, and it's looking good so far. I mean, everything I did in this demo felt fantastic. Um, I again they were relatively small snippets, but being able to mess with the class system, seeing how the battles turn out, and again just the overall like look and feel of this game, the art direction for it, fantastic. So yeah, I think this is really shaping up to be something special. I think one of my most curious takeaways with this one so far, at least when talking about like the future of Dragon Quest, is how much of this is a like specific for this game or not. You know what I mean? Because like
Yeah.
when we
Hmm.
got Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D, it was like, oh, they're gonna do like a 1 and 2 HD 2D. Like that just makes sense. Like it's just like that art style, that aesthetic, like that makes sense to port that over to these titles as well and make that happen. With this one, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to seeing like Dragon Quest 8 in this art style. Uh, but I will say that it feels very fitting for 7 specifically. And so I wonder if like, this is a move, something to do for all their 3D titles moving ahead. Maybe they go more for this kind of crafty aesthetic instead of like just straight up, illustrated anime kind of look. Um, but I think it works excellently here.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very curious about that as well. Um and like if I it's weird cuz like if I were to guess I would I would think that this is like what it, they initially planned it to be its own thing, but because I think people do ultimately like the doll aesthetic, um, that Square is a big fan of like, oh, people like this, let's do it again. And so, which is especially nowadays with how games are, like that's even more of a thing that developers do. But like Square has always kind of been like that. So I assume that if like 7 is a big success, and assuming they haven't started on an 8 remake already, it's probably something that they're gonna do. I could see it. I don't think it's gonna be like, the pseudo uh asymmetric isometric point of view. I don't think that's going to be like a thing in 8, but like just the general aesthetic of like the world and the art direction and things like that.
Yeah, no, I could absolutely see it. I could absolutely see it. And I would welcome it, honestly, like with what I've seen of this one.
Yeah. So, curious to see how that's like so far down the line, but in general, like I'm really excited for this game. I'm really excited for it. It's coming basically at a near perfect time for me. I still need to finish Dragon Quest V and play through Dragon Quest VI on top of many other games. But yeah, I like how they're reimagining it, making it tighter, giving those quality of life improvements to make it approachable for those that haven't played a Dragon Quest before and have been kind of sitting on doing it. Maybe they're like, oh, I was going to plan on playing 11 soon, and then they see this and they're like, at this point, I'm just going to wait for this one to come out and do this one instead. And then also just like kind of still being true to the original fans. In most cases, there's certain decisions that they decided to make that don't have fans happy, like removing the casino and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
ultimately, I think this is shaping up to be a really cool package, and I cannot wait to play it myself.
Yes. And on the subject of removed content, response to that, they've also added new islands. So, like, I think the streamlining comes a little bit in terms of how quickly they get you into the action at the start, and maybe how like certain specific plot lines are paced. But it's not like they streamlined the game by cutting half the content. Like that's not they have done minimal cuts while also adding. So that's one thing where I think I've just seen kind of like general reactions and kind of an unclear idea on like how much has been lost, and it's not zero, but it's also not necessarily like a huge significant amount. And I don't know what those specific ones are, so maybe by the time the game comes out, someone will be like, "Oh man, like I really liked this one specific place," but it's like, okay, I'm sorry for that person, but like it seems like it's not like a heavy cut. I guess is just the main thing I wanted to get across.
Dope, dope.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts on Dragon Quest VII Reimagined before we dip out, Kevin?
I cannot believe this game is coming out less than like 6 months apart from 1 and 2 HD.
That and
That's
like
just
just the fact that it got announced and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's coming out in like 8 months."
yeah.
It's like,
Which, by the
"What?"
way, yeah. So in case anyone listening does not know when this game's coming out, it's February 5th. It is releasing on everything current. PS5, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, Nintendo Switch 2, and PC.
Yep. Dope. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to our preview of Dragon Quest VII Reimagined. You can follow me on socials at CamFinalMix. You can follow Kevin on socials at Kevin Kenson. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, we'll catch you later.
Later.